to Office Hours for April 24th. This is where we discuss the roadmap for Meltano Core, Meltano Cloud. We discuss new features. Hopefully, we eventually do some demos here from ourselves and from the community. So stay tuned for that. I'm here with Reuben, engineer at
Hello.
Meltano, and Aaron.
And Aaron.
Hey, Aaron.
Welcome.
Trying to sort my sound out. So yeah, busted. StreamYard is not working.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you, for the benefit of everyone, if you didn't tune in last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about state backends. So a quick summary, quick recap of that. Meltano supports both first-party state managers. Those are the system database, which by default is a SQLite file in your project. And also like things like Postgres, but also cloud storage like S3, Azure Blob, Google Cloud Storage. And then there's also third-party or external state backends, which is anything that can work as a function as a key value store. You can make it a state backend. So we have our own, we maintain our own versions of Postgres, Snowflake, and BigQuery state backends. So those are open and available for the broader community. Now we will discuss another option that we are discussing internally and that might be of interest. Yeah, so me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are the problems with these external state backends like Snowflake and BigQuery and our own version of Postgres for that? First of all, it's a second package you have to maintain, right? So you have to manage both your Meltano installation and the installation for injecting this other package into the Meltano environment, which, because it's not a plugin, it's not a Meltano plugin, it's not as easy or straightforward or something that users are familiar with. So yeah, it's another thing to learn, another thing to add to the things you have to learn when managing complex Meltano project. It's also the issue that you can only have one state backend per project. So you can, of course, work around that using like environment variables, configuring your state backend configuration all with environment variables so that you just switch your environment and you're now using a different state backend. That's, of course, more advanced. Yeah. And of course, there's the other issue where if you want to use the same database or warehouse as your state backend, as your data warehouse, then you have to duplicate configuration between your target. So for example, your target Snowflake, you have to declare your account, your database, your role, warehouse, etc. And then you have to repeat that for the state backend.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The settings might be slightly different to what the target is as well, and there's always a bit of a mapping problem involved there. One of the main things I think is beautiful about Meltano plugins is that when something breaks upstream, like dependency breaking changes are kind of unavoidable in the Python ecosystem. It's fairly easy to resolve them in that you just patch the pip URL of a plugin.
Yeah.
That becomes more complicated with a state backend if that is also affected by some breaking dependency change. In that because you've injected this extra package into your Meltano environment, you therefore have to then patch your Meltano environment. And then because that is a single virtual environment within itself, you start opening the door to potentially like conflicting dependency versions within that particular environment. Not to mention that there may be in some cases, there may just be like conflicts between Meltano and the state backend if you're trying to install like a custom one you've written that happens to depend on some version of a dependency that Meltano wants another one completely about. So, yeah.
I think those issues like conflicts should be more or less be resolved when you're developing your state backend, right? Maybe, but if you leave your like dependency ranges open, yeah, you could have a situation where one of the dependencies updates and it breaks either Meltano or the state backend or the interaction between them. So yeah,
it's just another thing to worry about, I suppose, is what I was getting at.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so those are some of the issues with external state backends. So there's internal state management with the systemdb and S3, and those have the limitations that, of course, there's only a few of them. Not everything is supported, and the limitations of external state backends is that they're harder to manage than a Meltano plugin, essentially. So there's a third option that we are considering. Reuben or Aaron, is there anything you want to add here about like the motivation?
I'm happy to speak on it. Aaron, do you want to speak on it? You're muted if you're trying to unmute yourself. This is new software for us. Bear with us.
Yeah, I literally try to find the unmute button. I think you said it all on the kind of binary dependency management of the state backend side. Some of them are solvable by making more based state backends, like just making them first-class citizens of Meltano. I think that makes a bit more bloat in the library, so probably I'd hesitate to do that. I feel like any target problem, the expectation that you do have an external state manager, we will get into it in a minute, no doubt. But that to do it one way, I can see why there's a certain motivation to do that. And I guess it comes down to the primary use case. If the primary use case is harder, then I'd probably err on something that fits the primary use case, and actually maybe a state backend idea is suitable where there is no other choice, rather than it being the default choice. It's kind of one of the ways to think about it.
Yeah, I guess the main purpose, just to kind of recap from the previous office hours as well, was the motivation for using an external state backend for us is to move the state to the customer warehouse rather than the Postgres that Meltano Cloud provisions on behalf of a customer. So state being managed by the target will achieve the same goal, but hopefully ideally in a more like seamless way that we'll touch on in a second. Some more pros of that.
Yeah, essentially the state goes with the data, right? So if migrations and things like that are hopefully easier with that approach, right? You move to a different orchestrator or a different platform, and the data goes with the warehouse. So that's a big advantage. Now, how we would roll this out is this would probably be a feature of our Singer SDK. It would be probably a new capability, a new CLI flag, if you're familiar with those, for targets. And then we'll roll out to some of our targets, probably starting with Postgres, Snowflake, and BigQuery. And of course, Meltano would have to know about this new capability. So yeah, there's a few things that need to happen under the hood for that to be supported, but there will be stages to this rollout, and we will of course be testing heavily at each stage. Now, one of the questions is whether with this you have now 2 or 3 options for sorting state, right? if you create a new Meltano project right now, you will have the default systemdb SQLite state manager or state backend. Then let's say you want to use a different external state backend. Let's say you want to use Snowflake, and then this option comes in. Do we want to, by default, store state in the target, or do we want this to be something that the user enables? I think there are advantages and disadvantages of both approaches. So, I mean, want to gather feedback from the community, and maybe also further down the line when we're implementing this, maybe it will be clear for us what's the best approach. But yeah.
I feel might be worth asking the question just in our little forum here. Edgar, I think when we first brought up the idea, and I spoke to Taylor about it, and so, I was just socializing our motivations for this particular idea. I think you had some reservations, and I recall them being around, the standard around, doing just one job, some of these issues. I wonder where you sit, having had time to reflect on it, like, and thinking about all the sort of wider issues. Are you sort of immediately thinking you're still cautious about the idea, or are you thinking definitely not, or are you thinking actually there's quite a lot of benefits here and it'll be worth it?
I think there are benefits. It's just this would probably add. There's the issue, of course, of targets will now do two things. It will load your data in a warehouse or in a file or whatever, and they will also now manage state, if they can manage state, right?
So it won't just load; it will also write. It will write back to the database as opposed to also loading into it.
Yeah, it will write back to the database, and then would read state back to give it to the extractor, to the tab. So yeah, it's that there's this single responsibility idea of the Singer ecosystem where tabs do just extract data, targets load data, and that's it. You don't have to worry or reason about other ways they can fail. This adds complexity in that regard. It also makes Meltano more complex, Meltano Core, in the sense that it has to run the target in order to get invoke the target to get the state, and then use the state to invoke the tab, and then invoke the target again to load the data, which will also load or save state. So that's the
risk of taking the discussion somewhere slightly different. If you look at it now, I don't think there is a one job idea really. So a tab is invoked to get the catalog now, right?
Yeah.
Then it's invoked to get some data. And arguably the target is receiving and passing through the state and could just consume it and write it anyway. And so it seems like a fairly minor leap to ask a target to do a different capability and be invoked for a slightly different thing. So just to clarify, I'm definitely on the positive side of the fence where I'm like, actually, it feels like a pretty sound, as long as it's well-defined job, not like super weird in terms of what the core should be making it do.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's the other aspect of this that there's a kind of leaky abstraction in the sense that the state or the target doesn't know about a higher level concept of a pipeline, right? You just know that it's reading input from standard input and processing that. But now we will have to know about some state ID, which is a key we will use to save and retrieve a state. That of course is just something that needs to happen for this to work, right? But yeah.
That's just config though, right? Or could just be config, which it already accepts.
Part of the state message, and then it doesn't care anymore.
I think my reservation with this, and
yeah, go ahead.
To clarify my position, I also think it's a good idea. I think Discover is like a well-known, mature part of the Singer specification, or like discovery, and that generally. I think we're probably sort of like going down the route of something, maybe not extending the specification, but like adding a concept to what a target should be doing in terms of the spec. Whether that's like a new, and so like a tap has like -- discover. I'm imagining a target has some new kind of option that we're inventing, like -- I guess it could even be discover for targets, which is discover the state, but you could probably name it better than that.
Yeah. This is probably getting into in the weeds, what I'm going to say, but this is, I don't know if it has to be configuration or it has to be like an argument to a CLI option. I guess the risk with making configuration is that you could end up in a situation where you're pointing different pipelines to the same state key, right? If you, for some reason, override that configuration or hard code it. There's many ways we could. I mean, those are in the weeds implementation. But yeah, what do you guys think about like making it opt-in versus opt-out? This is something like if the users are in a version of Meltano with a plugin that supports it, should it be enabled by default?
I'm yes, but there's a strong motivation for fitting into our environment, which is, I think, probably natural. I also think if I really wonder about the being on by default, it doesn't necessarily have to be used, and targets can obviously write things scalably, and there's no likely performance overhead to a target just dealing with it always. So I think the enabled by default at the target level and always writing it, but not necessarily being used, feels like a pretty safe option.
Yeah, my concern is from the point of view of somebody who's already using or has their state somewhere that's not in where the target is pointing at. Like they've got their state in Postgres and they're primarily using like target Snowflake, and there's going to be some kind of migration to move that state over. If it is opt-in and you just do that switch without doing some kind of migration, then pipelines are just going to start running from the beginning of time or whatever their initial configured start date is again. And so there will need to be a step before that. I'm not sure how manual or automated that can be, but some step to migrate the state over to that new destination.
Yeah. It'd be fascinating to know how pervasive the state backend configuration is. And I'm not sure to what degree, publishing the telemetry about how the product is used, collecting that and understanding it, or just asking, and then whoever responds is kind of got a louder voice. It might be interesting to know what the radius of that change would be.
I don't think we have telemetry about the state backend. So I think there's an open issue for adding that from a while back. So I don't think we have the data, unfortunately. Related to what you said, Reuben, I think another potential issue is, let's say you have a project where you're loading data into a data warehouse, but also into S3 files. So you need, your Snowflake warehouse supports writing and reading its own state, but then you will still need somewhere to store the state for the S3 target, right? So now you need a state backend or the built-in Postgres, whatever, and you're also loading, you're saving state with your warehouse for its own.
Or you need a way to flag that as the fallback default when running with a loader that doesn't, or just some configuration around that behavior. Like if you've got like a primary warehouse that you want state to be stored into, and you also have something that's loading into Postgres, do you want the state to end up in that Postgres, or do you want it to go into your Snowflake warehouse? I think there's some options to choose from there potentially.
I think the problem with the second approach, you're logging into S3 but using target Postgres to save data, is that you now have to make the target Postgres configuration available in the
context of the target S3.
Of target S3, yeah.
So it sort of feels like it should be something slightly higher level than a plugin, but then, or maybe some sort of an alternate plugin type than a loader, maybe an extension to a loader or something.
Yeah. But then it's definitely opt-in, right? Because you have to add this new plugin that supports managing state in your warehouse.
Yeah. I think the main sticking point, like you said, for me is having to invoke the implication of having to invoke the target now to go and get state. Like you said, in the context of another loader that doesn't support this, where you do need to go get state from somewhere, that is more of a challenge, obviously, than when you're just invoking the target already and having to get state from it, and that you're going to have to invoke S3 and target S3, and then actually also invoke target Snowflake under the covers, and you need to make sure that that configuration is available to be able to make that connection.
Yeah.
There's lots of pros to this, but I think there's a lot of cons also. So just being aware of all of how, not cons necessarily, problems to work around to get to the point where we want to get to with this.
Not only to make the functionality available, but also to make the UX good enough, right? So, Yep. Other issues here. I think we already went through this violation of single responsibility, which may or may not be true. We already kind of mentioned that for not every system would support managing state, like target HubSpot, whereas you may be able to
do it if you really want to. I don't know how you'd feel about your state being tracked in a CRM system. Definitely possible. Maybe a hack day thing.
Yeah, and the last one is I think the biggest sticky point that you mentioned, Reuben. How do you make this useful, but not get in the way of people using or running the Meltano project? Is there anything else you would like to mention or go through about this thinking roadmap, or?
No, I suppose what's kind of my mind is, at what point do you go forward with it, and perhaps maybe do we make a decision because we have a strong enough reason to, but you do it in a way that doesn't affect anyone, but then it becomes later, popularized and popular. There's I don't really think I've experienced breaking changes in the past. The Meltano project has not been released and then had to upgrade in any sense between major versions. It's pretty consistently been backward compatible, which I'd expect everyone values. So, there's sort of some principles of what we'd like to keep there.
I guess should we mention how we are using? Give a little bit more detail about how we're using external state backends and how their problems are a problem for Meltano Cloud, or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, let me elaborate on one, and perhaps you guys jump in with others that you've seen. So we had one customer that needed to run 170 plus pipelines at the same time. So when, even though the cloud data warehouse could handle 170 connections because there were 170 targets loading data, our state store, the default systemdb Postgres, had a much tougher time with all the other work that was going on, suddenly having 170 connections open up. So immediately by going to a state store that's the same cloud data warehouse as the target eliminates some of the load on the Postgres state store. And if you push it into the target, it eliminates half the connections that are necessary on top. So there's a kind of immediate overhead that just disappears by the target dealing with it. So then that's one of the things that I reflect on as a much more optimal way of running it, a much more scalable way of running it, even though the price, the complexity at the initialization of what is my state may be slightly higher or slightly more complex in the core. Maybe another one while I'm riffing on these. When we run Meltano Cloud, look at a pipeline and try to run it locally, the expectation is that you can build a project, run your pipeline exactly like we do, having only set the environment. But the dependency issue on a state backend that you might not have in your Meltano environment, because it's not managed by a Python virtual environment, can immediately appear as a kind of horrible, where is this Python dependency type problem, because it's not managed by Meltano or anything anymore. So there's a few like usability issues that we'd love to iron out and make a lot smoother for our use case. Maybe there are others. Reuben, you can think of any others?
I think the main motivation for moving that state, or one of the main ones for moving the state into the customer data warehouse, is that they then own that data rather than it being provisioned, the database, Postgres database for every workspace being provisioned by us and actually inaccessible to the customer currently. And so we bear the responsibility of making sure that that state database is available at all times. And hypothetically, if things were to go very wrong and we lose access to those databases or whatever, that state gone. So
maybe making that slightly more real for anyone who's not sort of thinking about our cloud necessarily. So if you want to interact with state in Meltano Cloud, you can run a state command to see what the current state is. So you have some access to the store, but only through Meltano, the command. The cloud, not just like the worst happens with our infrastructure, but if you wanted to pretty freely run the orchestration in other clouds, other locations, like you wouldn't have to move anything. You'd just literally run your project somewhere else, whether that were locally on your laptop or in a different cloud entirely. There'd be nothing to migrate anymore, so you wouldn't have to worry about the connection to the state store, because you'd have the thing that you were trying to load into, of course. So it does make it more portable from that sense, fewer dependencies.
Yeah. To elaborate on Edgar's or your point on the dependency issue on the state backend not being present for someone's local installation of Meltano, Edgar was showing me something recently about expressing the Meltano project as a Python package, essentially with its own set of dependencies, including that being a specific version of Meltano with some other dependencies like the state backends themselves. And then you basically just install your project and get a Meltano environment that would be portable wherever you were running it.
Yeah, to expand a bit on that. So the difference between the cloud and local environments is not limited to state backends. Like it's not limited to, there's this package that is in cloud, but I don't know, I have to install in my local environment to be able to run my project. There's just a general issue of, I don't know which version of Meltano is running in cloud. it's actually not the latest. It's B3 and the latest is B4. So if I install Meltano to run the project locally, it's mostly backwards compatible, but there are subtle differences, especially in commands other than like Meltano run. Like if you try Meltano config or things like that, there are subtle changes between B3 and B4. And so those may not work. So there's the general problem. Yeah.
It was only up to fairly recently that Meltano Core added support for specifying like a minimum Meltano version, right?
Yeah, but right now it will just fail to say, okay, you're not running with the supported version yet.
Yeah, so there's no way to just like resolve the project to that CLI version, and that's not even accounting for the fact that I don't think you can indicate in that syntax that it depends on like this other state backend, for example.
Yeah, no, that's something that I would like to explore, but yeah, it's just a different issue entirely. Yeah.
Your project needs a pip-url, a top-level pip-url.
I think that's how some like package managers do it. I think Poetry, if you're familiar with that, Poetry supports plugins, and it does that kind of thing. It supports like saying which version of Poetry your project requires and which version of each plugin it requires, and it will, I think, automatically get you the right installation if you don't have it. Or if the Poetry tool you're running is not compatible with that, it will create a different installation of Poetry with those requirements and use that under the hood.
Yeah. Well, anecdotally, I had so many problems with Poetry for that exact reason. But move to another fancy new Python package manager in UV now, just to add another one to the list of the available options for everyone.
It is generally painful enough that I could see the motivation of Meltano just managing itself, even if it's Python, UV under the covers, doing all of that work for you.
I think the configuration you shared, Edgar, was some like UV specific configuration in the pyproject.toml file, right? To get it to work as a package.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it many ways, but yeah, I think the easiest is just have a pyproject.toml file and add Meltano, UV add Meltano, UV add your state backend package, and there you go. You can just activate your virtual environment or just do UV run Meltano, and there you go. Yeah. So I think I'm interested in that problem of how do we communicate the environment from cloud to a local environment so that they're compatible or the same. Yeah. Cool. I think we can move on to. Are there any questions in?
Anyone in the chat want to say anything? Give you a minute or so in case you're typing a great long question. Yeah, I think that the pyproject.toml idea that you showed me, I was very convinced by that, and I think that would be a good change. If you can Meltano init your project and have Meltano at that, I suppose that's kind of a chicken and egg actually, because you need Meltano to init a project, so you have to have some kind of Meltano installation initially.
Yes,
but that would
maybe I can make a demo request for the next one of these. Is that you show us how you work with it, and
I'm gonna miss the next one though, and I want to see a demo of it. I'll watch it from YouTube chat. I want to see it live though.
Yeah, that would be a fun one. Yep.
But yeah, if that can express its like the version you init a project with expresses itself as like that's the Meltano version that this project is minimum compatible or just compatible with. I'm not sure about the specific requirements there. And then you were able to install the project and get Meltano like feasibly anywhere. I like that idea.
I don't think there are any questions. Wait another minute. If not, I think we can.
Roadmap time.
Yeah, just the roadmap.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I can talk about a couple of these connectors that I think, Reuben, you were involved with most of them here.
Yeah, most, if not some of them. I mean, I wasn't imagining we call out the specifics of each one, but maybe we can. Just this top level connectors. This is what we've recently released as new collectors for Meltano Cloud. I guess we can talk through them one by one.
Yeah.
So anyone who's familiar with Meltano and has ever wanted to sync some data for like some spreadsheets data, whether that's like CSV or an Excel file or a JSON-L file, has probably dealt with spreadsheets anywhere. We offer first-party support via that plugin, and we're constantly adding new like protocols and like sources. Latest being Outlook. So we support with this new plugin connecting to an Outlook mailbox via like an OAuth connect to Microsoft login. Go and read attachments. Also treat the mailbox as a file system. Folders are directories, emails are directories, files are attachments on emails, and just sync it like it's a file system, like any of the other spreadsheet sources. So that's new. Same with, I think SharePoint probably existed in the last release we did, but kind of informally. So we'll call that new as well. SharePoint, very similar way. Obviously, that's already very file system-like, but a new source nonetheless. Connect to Microsoft, give it SharePoint access, and connect to your SharePoint, no problem. There's been some updates to the Gmail one, mostly just maintenance, like keeping the version up to date with because all of these spreadsheets plugins come from a single source of truth in our tap spreadsheets anywhere base repository. So there's a little bit of maintenance and just making sure that we're keeping the version of those up to date with the main repository. So that's for Gmail, and there's also like the sort of base IMAP connection, which is what the Gmail and the Outlook implementations are also built off. So those are all v0.5.0. You can check out GitHub for some more context on that. Do you want to talk about Meltano Cloud?
Yeah, I can talk about Meltano Cloud. This is, I don't know if we mentioned this last time.
I think we can act like this one's new as well, because it was probably quite early on. We'll call it new again.
Yeah, it's not V01, it's V013. So yeah, we had to iron out some kinks in the implementation, but I think it's, I think in Meltano Cloud, it should be mostly work out of the box, right? Reuben, you just add a plugin and it will get you your workspace data into your warehouse. Yeah. So
Yes, it's a no settings required tap, which is always nice. You can just save it and run it. All the authentication is populated by us at runtime, obviously, because it's like a first-party connector for Meltano Cloud. So we at runtime provide the token necessary to run it, and the context of which workspace it should run against. Also, when you're running it locally, you have to obviously provide those yourself. But it's pretty seamless experience in Meltano Cloud running it.
Yeah, it will get you data like about your workspace, your pipelines, data sets, things like that. Yeah. Flavio, I think neither of us are too familiar with the latest changes, but I think all other folks in the team have been working on them. I think the latest was new report streams are supported now. Yeah. How about Google Analytics? I'm not familiar with changes there.
Google Analytics, though, if we're calling out, so I think the previous version was just our initial release, V0.1.0. There was a small issue with So Google Analytics tap is all like custom report based. I think there's some like default ones you get out of the box, but you can provide custom reports. But regardless of which mode you're operating in, the timestamp of when the report was generated was previously always set to the whatever timestamp was coming, or whatever start date was coming through from config, whereas actually, in fact, the tap was incrementally based. So often it would be requesting the report from some further on point in time than the initial start date was configured, but the initial start date was coming through as the time the report was generated regardless. So there's a small fix there just to make sure we're reflecting the state bookmark correctly, if there is one, in the time that the report was generated.
Cool.
Tap Jira, there was a small issue with just a schema property being incorrectly typed, which for a customer meant that when we were trying to load it into Target Snowflake, the record validation failed at that point. Thought it was a string, but it actually was coming through as or it was expecting a string, but actually came through as an object. Cool. I sort of think there's maybe a wider discussion to be had around that. I don't think it was a breaking change in Jira. I think it was just wrong in the tap. But I do think there is something that it feels wrong for a target to fall over on something like that, especially because this was like a nested property within like a quite a big structure, and it was being loaded into like a single column. So it being that wrong type wouldn't have mattered anyway, because it's just a JSON blob in this like a string column essentially. Or a variant, I suppose, for Snowflake.
Should probably just validate that it's this is a JSON blob. It's a valid JSON blob. I don't care what's in it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Some fields very nested in there. It says it's a string, but it's not really a string. Yeah.
If it was with flattening enabled, then it's a different story, because obviously those expose more and more columns which do need types, and so record validation makes more sense. But only on like top level properties, I suppose, is what I was getting at. I think in the past we have disabled record validation in the target to work around issues like this, where it wasn't so simple as just going and fixing one, because there are actually like loads that were wrong but didn't need to be addressed necessarily, because we were loading in a similar way to this.
It's a whole issue because the Singer aspect just says it supports JSON schema, but it doesn't make any claims as to which version or which draft of JSON schema, and JSON schemas can be very complex and express a lot of things.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse, things that don't make sense to like save in a data warehouse. Like, what does an all of schema mean for a field you're loading in a data warehouse?
We're getting back to the just express everything as a string discussion we were having the other day. Which I know Aaron has said to me in the past before. Go on, you go.
We duplicated up to Google Analytics. I just noticed there.
Oh yes. I meant to call. That might be my bad. Unless I meant to call out Google Search Console, but I think we talked about that last week. I don't think there's been any changes to that. Weather API.
Weather API. I think the biggest issue we addressed here was the parsing of the start date. I think I don't know why. For some reason, it was the setting was of type date instead of datetime, and it was trying to parse a date from a datetime value, and it was crashing because of that. So that is fixed now. It accepts a datetime. It will cast it down to a date, but it will accept a datetime. So I think those are the updates for our connectors.
On Weather API, there's some upcoming discussion about supporting their bulk load if you're on the correct plan, I believe. They support, or the API supports making bulk requests. So it may be that we add support for this also in Tap Weather API soon also.
That's a good point. Right now you can get forecast and historical weather data for one location. So if you want to do that for multiple locations, you have to invoke the tab as many times as there are locations. So yeah, and it will make as many requests to the API. So yeah, not,
it supports location IDs plural, right? You don't have to invoke the tap for every single location. It accepts passing in a list of locations, but will do like n times 2 requests for all.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, it does like partition. Yeah, the requests by location. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you don't have to invoke the tab as many times, but
Yeah.
it will make as many requests. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that bulk support, I briefly looked into it. It would, I think the main sticking point is that it would take ages at the moment. I did look into it. It will still consume, if you've got 12,000 locations that you want to request, it's still going to consume 24,000 API call credits, even though you're only making one request from the outside.
Oh man.
So just be mindful of your quota, I suppose,
Yeah.
if using that in the future.
It might be more, it may be faster, but it will not be cheaper. For sure.
Yeah. They always get you somewhere.
Yeah. Any updates to cloud? I think you're making changes to like
yeah, so I
workspace
mean,
deployment.
yeah, that's our the plugin changes there are as a result of us doing a new deployment of the platform this week. I'm pretty sure it was mostly just plugins. I don't think there was any platform fixes or features that went out as a result, but I can just have a look to check if there's anything else worth calling out. Generally, actually, this is probably something also good to call out. We've been starting to document the setup and available streams of connectors like this in a much more detail than we were previously. So that should hopefully, at least for these plugins, aid you in like how exactly you get set up. I think the ones that support OAuth login here, by the most part, that is sort of fairly self-explanatory in that we've obfuscated, by supporting OAuth, obfuscated away the complexity of having to go get a refresh token from somewhere in the case of Google, which is always a fun endeavor to try and explain to someone before we had this. But now it's just connect to Google or connect to Microsoft, and we handle that whole credential exchange for you. But generally, the documentation for these plugins is far more improved now, and you can see that like a list of what streams are made available by default in the side panel when you're configuring a pipeline with a specific plugin.
And going forward, all plugins should have that, right? All new plugins and maybe some updates to, we're going to start backfilling that information for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, that's mostly it. I mean, there's some other under the cover stuff that is not relevant to call out here, but yeah, mostly docs and plugins this week. There will be some new features and fixes and being worked on in this current cycle we're on. So hopefully we'll have something more interesting to share on the feature side in the next office hours call. But yeah, we're always iterating on plugins, and those will be the main thing we'll be calling out here, like in this connector section. Yeah. Any particular updates on Meltano Core or the SDK you want to call out here?
Yeah, the SDK. I've been working on the next, I think, B0.54 version for a long while now. I think the main outstanding open pull requests for that are related to like not crashing when one of the stream fails.
Yes, like continue on the errors and then give you a summary.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still working out the details on like the more generic PR. I have PR for like just that for just REST API streams, but I have another API on top of that, like for the more general issue. So that's still in the works. That's the big outstanding pull request. The simple eval issue that's fixed. I backported it. So yeah, B0.53 has the latest of that. So yeah, our use of simple level is now safe, quote unquote safe, and using the latest simple level dependency. And
so is that out in the latest release then?
It's in the latest release, B50. .53.7. So yeah, if you're
Yeah.
on 53, you should get that hopefully
Yeah,
automatically.
we've got a number of taps on that latest, I think latest but one SDK version that have an outstanding security flag for
Yeah.
the simpleeval thing on GitHub. So it'd be good to bump that and then
Yeah, so
get that
I
to go
think
away.
if you refresh the log file, GitHub should get rid of that. So yeah.
I'll wait for the Pendapot to do that.
Yeah. And for Meltano Core, I think we released B4.2, I think a couple of weeks ago. Not much. I mean, you can. I don't remember exactly what was shipped there, but you can go and read the release notes there.
Yeah.
Not any groundbreaking things there, I think. And there are a couple of community PRs I'm reviewing right now, like especially mostly focus around help output for Meltano Run, like categorizing all the different options so that they're not all over the place, and you have like your this is the run options, state options, etc. And also for settings, like right now when you do Meltano config list to get the list of settings for a plugin, it's a mess of all over the place. You don't know which ones are required, etc. So with these changes, it's a community PR. So with these changes, you would see again like categories of settings. So these are what you already configured. This is required. This is like optional, etc. So yeah.
Is that settings group validation being respected finally?
No, I mean no.
Okay.
Not respected, but at least documented or presented in.
Okay.
In the field,
yeah, of course, like respected in that it would like check before invoking the plugin that you've provided all those right things. But you mean in terms of displaying the list of settings?
Yeah.
In an organized way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that feels relevant in that we are also like trying to document all of the plugins available in Meltano Cloud in a better way as well. If we can somehow couple like the docs to come out from the tap in a nice way automatically, that makes our job a hell of a lot simpler in providing that documentation in Meltano Cloud.
Yeah.
So yeah, excited for that.
Cool.
Yeah, and a quick reminder that all the repos are open source here, so always welcome contributions, and please go and open issues for like Meltano Core and SDK and all the variety of taps that we have, taps and targets and utilities and fun little side of things that we haven't touched in 3 years. Yeah, feel free to open issues and pull requests on those. Welcome contributions.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to review those. All right. I think that's everything from our end. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Reuben.